When it's Tuesday, it's the Raw Leadership Talk. And we are glad to be here again, engaging with you on this important broadcast, coming to you live from the Africa Center for Public Speaking in Nairobi. Joined with Dr. Paul Kariuki, all the way from Durban, South Africa. Where are you joining us from? We'll be glad to hear from you. We'll be glad to have your active participation today as we tackle this important topic on organizational leadership shifts. Where are you tuning in from? Even as we listen to this instrumental, it will be great to hear from you. Are you watching us from YouTube? Or are you watching us from Facebook? Talk to us. Our topic of discussion today is organizational leadership shifts, putting people first over processes. I'm sure you stand to benefit a lot from the kind of discussion that we're going to have. A wonderful discourse that we are looking forward to today. Where are you watching us from? Let's engage in this particular discussion. Dr. Paul, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Brother Dan. I'm happy to be here again this week.
Glad to have you, and I want to hope that your family and you and your colleagues are doing well down in South Africa.
Yes, we are all doing well by the grace of God. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, leadership has become the quintessential 21st century catchword. Nations, organizations, and individuals can trace the engine force of their success to one word: leadership. And as a complementary aid, inspiration. And that's why today we want to zoom closer into this reality of leadership as we look at our topic on organizational leadership shifts. And to help us in this discussion is none other but Dr. Paul Kariuki, the CEO of DDP South Africa. Dr. Paul, maybe in a nutshell, what is organizational leadership shifts?
So, Brother Dan, these are just opportunities that individuals tasked with the responsibilities of directing and mobilizing resources, including human resources, towards achieving organizational goals, values, and the vision of the organization that they work towards as a common goal by the entire management and entire team that they lead towards achieving those common vision.
Great. But is there value in organizations putting people first over processes? Is there any value in doing that? Because we seem to live in a world that people are so much engaged in processes, from governments all the way to corporate organizations and even small, medium enterprises.
Yes, there is a lot of value, my brother, especially where we have an opportunity because of what COVID-19 has done. Since it broke out a year and a half ago, there has been a lot of reorganization, or what we also call revisioning, where we constantly identify opportunities that do prosper organization forward, but at the same time, being conscious about the human resource that we have, because human resource is your most important asset as an organizational leader. And you need to be conscious about their well-being, about their probability to continue being productive as they also continually experience these changes that they have to adapt to because of COVID-19. And therefore, the value add is immeasurable. It's beyond rands and cents or dollars, if I have to put that way, because it's about really looking after the well-being of your human resource to be able to continue being relevant and staying longer in the sector that one finds themselves operating in. So there's immense value around that. The other value that it actually brings is that it gives leaders and organizations an opportunity to continue exploring other areas of work that could not have been explored if the situation could not have risen. There are many organizations that have found themselves now working in new areas of work because of what
Yes.
COVID-19 has done. And therefore, the shifts that are taking place include reimagining working models, reimagining human resources, reskilling them, and revisioning and readjusting their strategies so that they can continue being relevant and to stay longer in their game.
Wonderful thoughts right there. If you are joining us, we are discussing about organizational leadership shifts, putting people past over processes. And it will be good for you to engage. It will be good for you to bring your ideas. If you have any questions, to put them on the chat, and we will be glad to engage with you. People, Dr. Paul, are the greatest resources. How can organizations make sure they continually develop the human resource they have?
There are several things that organizations can do, Brother Dan. First and foremost is making sure that employees remain at the center of any changes that the organizations initiates to adapt towards what COVID-19 may have implicated their organizational areas of work, including the operations. So keeping and putting your staff members at the center of your decisions is one of the key things that any organization leader should be doing at this point in time to ensure that you do not create an environment where opportunities or processes become more important than the well-being of the people that you're leading. So having said that, one of the things, the other thing that organization leaders should do is to ensure that there is a proper process that helps understand the welfare and the mental health well-being of employees on a continuously basis. In fact, productive organizations have constant checking opportunities or processes that allow staff members to reach out to one another. And at the same time, also, there are other psychosocial support systems within the organization that help to determine continually the well-being of their staff members. So organizations that are able to explore such opportunities are finding themselves thriving better with very increased productivity of their teams, and of course, strengthening the interrelationships between employees and the employers, or between employees and their supervisors, because the holistic environment they find themselves in is supportive of the process that they're undergoing, the changes that they're experiencing, both at work and at home or in communities where they live, as well as the other factors that are in their environment that they cannot control. For example, economic conditions, political conditions, societal changes, all the things that are happening within their ecosystem, if I put it that way, become key determinants as to how employees respond to changes. And therefore, it's important that these processes are seen by leaders from a holistic point of view so they can be able to respond appropriately.
Wonderful thoughts, wonderful. And talking about mental health, do you think then that as a policy, organizations need to have in-house counselors or therapists whom their staff could go to whenever and wherever they feel like they need help?
Yes, it's important, even if they don't employ full-time counselors or other such professionals to support a process like that. It's important that organizations should alert their staff members that there is a possibility within the organization structure that whoever needs to talk to someone, or whoever needs to receive some level of counseling, that even if it's not professional, there is somebody in the organization to whom they can talk to. Even if it's not the organization leader, he or herself, There must be somebody within the organization that staff members must feel free and safe to talk to when they find themselves in situations that they're not able to interpret in a way that can help them to be productive. So it's important for those organizations that can be able to respond by actually hiring counselors or professional psychologists, people like those. It is important for them to do so. But where there are no resources to hire such professionals on a full-time basis for an organization, there must be someone within the organization to whom staff members must feel safe to talk to without fear or any repercussions that may hinder them to interact.
Thank you very much. In case you're joining us, we are discussing organizational leadership shifts, putting people first over processes, and to help us in that is Dr. Paul Kariuki of TDP South Africa. We'll be glad to hear your thoughts. Peter Karori said, bringing people first over processes, learning. Thank you very much. Welcome, my brother Peter, and thank you for your input so far. Paul, what happens when leaders in organization put processes before people? What usually happens?
Very, very drastic things do happen in such situations, Mr. Mugera. One is that you strain the relationships within the organization in the sense that trust is lost or becomes strained. Because if the bottom line or profits or external growth become the key thing compared to people, who are your greatest artists, there is always skepticism between the employers and the management and the employees, because the element of trust is lost. Their perception is that external growth, profits are more important than people who actually work to generate them. And so the first effect when processes become more important than people is that relationships get strained. Secondly, trust is lost. The trust between management and their employees becomes strained, and even in most cases it gets lost. Thirdly, productivity is lowered, because if people work in environments that they are not happy to be in, or don't feel like they are appreciated and valued, their sense of working in that place is actually diminished. Morale is diminished. And when morale is diminished, there is a direct correlation between morale and productivity. And the fourth thing that is most likely to happen, you start to see a high turnover rate of staff members. People starting looking for other alternatives, jobs elsewhere, including relocation. And because they don't feel like the environment is conducive enough for them to be retained or to continue to produce at their maximum best, then they start looking for alternative. Of course, that does affect organization at different levels. There is loss of institutional knowledge. There is also loss of resources. And there is also loss of time, because whenever these negative shifts do happen, they do implicate the organization in one level to another.
But then how do we create the balance in the place where we put people first, and then people can be people, and they begin to take advantage of the goodwill of leadership? How do we make sure we create balances so that the organizational leadership shift is efficient enough to ensure that the processes are not neglected?
That's a very important question and a very real one, because there has to be a balance where the authenticity of leadership that is working very hard to create an environment for the leader for the organization to thrive must not be taken advantage of or be perceived as if it's weakness, so that staff or members of staff start thinking it's okay not, for example, to be disciplined in terms of the expectations that they need to adhere to, or in terms of processes that they need to adhere to as far as organizational existence is concerned. So the balance here is for leaders to create an environment where people can relate as people. So open channels of communications. So if for example, let's assume that a staff member has erred in one way or another, there has to be room for conversation to be able to understand what are the conditions that led to the situation that is there, and then look at the various ways of remedial action that do not necessarily mean punitive. And so those channels of communication must be opened. They must be intentional. That is not because of coercion that this process has to be made the way it is. And then, of course, there has to be a continuous room for engagement. Certain things cannot be addressed at one go. There has to
Yeah.
be an ongoing process of communication and dialoguing to find common ground and generate solutions together. So you avoid a top-down approach and you do what I would call a bottom-up approach. So we collectively seek for solutions, whatever the situation may be, so that we still honor organizational processes that keep the organizational function, and also we honor the element of empathy from leadership to employees, so that the balance is about, it's a give and take. We're creating an opportunity for communication and ongoing dialoguing, but at the same time also we're also saying organizations exist because policies are there to be followed and to be observed and to be respected.
Wonderful thoughts right there. But then leadership is a process by itself. And leaders themselves, they are in the process of continuous growth. What are your thoughts about leaders who don't understand the dynamics of putting people first over processes? What would you suggest that they should do to be able to develop themselves to come to that place of understanding what needs to be done?
Firstly, it's a dangerous point to be as organizational leaders, to be in a place where one is not willing to be in a process where they can be able to engage with their teams that they lead or staff that they lead, because what it does, it creates what I would call toxic environments of work. And when you get
Yeah.
to toxic environments of work, there is very highly possibility that not only productivity will be lost, but you actually start injuring people's health. You know, these psychosocial health conditions we're talking about, they become one of the products of such an environment. So how should this kind of leaders change? Firstly, they should practice what I would call self-awareness.
Yeah.
Understand where you are as a person. And then secondly, try to feel the world of the other people that you're trying to, engage with directly. So before you act, think three times. I always say think. People say think twice. I say three times. Firstly, assess your action and attitude.
Yeah.
Secondly, assess the implications of your decision. And
Mhm.
thirdly, ask yourself, is this the only way to address this issue? So as a leader, you have some kind of a balancing act within your own self first before you actually do act. And then now travel that journey with the individual. So I said, co-create situations of solutions where
Yes.
mutual understanding becomes the center of the conversation, because at the end of the day, it's not a responsible leader. It's not the one who kills people, killing their motivation, killing their energy, killing their dreams, killing their vision. A leader should be always inspirational. Create an environment where people still feel they are worth living. Create an environment where people still believe they have something to contribute that is positive for your organization and the world that they live in. Create an environment where you appreciate people's gifts
Oh,
and
yeah.
talents, yeah, on an ongoing basis. And then create an environment where those gifts and talents are nurtured on a continuous basis by constantly affirming people. And affirming people does not mean you do not confront any situation that is not useful for the health of the organization. Affirming people says you acknowledge output that is productive, you
Yes.
acknowledge where people are excelling, but at the same time, also you acknowledge areas of improvement. Remember, I'm not saying areas of weakness, I'm saying areas of improvement, because the way we interpret is what we hear. If you tell a person you are weak, there's a high probability to affect their self esteem. But if you tell a person there is an area that needs improvement, what you're telling this person essentially is that I recognize a gift, I recognize an ability, I recognize a potential, but we can take it further. That has a long way to influence a person understanding that you're not discarding them or looking down upon them. You are just saying simply an invitation to come to you and be able to co-create a situation that will be mutually beneficial. I think those are the kinds of ways that leaders can be able to adjust the way they understand themselves and influence an organizational shift that makes people feel appreciated, encouraged, and uplifted, and you will see automatic results in their productivity and staff retention as well as their morale.
Wonderful thoughts right there. Dev Devi watching from Botswana. Welcome, my brother. Vincent Ochambo still watching from Mombasa. Thank you very much. Guys, if you have any thoughts, any ideas, we encourage you to engage with us. But as we get closer to completing this broadcast today, Dr. Paul, we live in an age of the linchpins, indispensability of people. Even as we talk about putting people first over processes, what are your thoughts on employees or people who want to operate on average? They don't want to grow and become indispensable within the same organization that put them first over processes.
That's a very powerful question and a very important one to understand that we can only grow whenever we have an opportunity that challenges our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, impactful leaders are able to stretch their staff and the members of their organizations to stretch them from places of comfortability to a place of growth. It's not necessarily a place of discomfort. It's a place of growth. And any impactful organizational leader would want to see every member of their staff getting into a place where they are able to grow from where they have been to the next place they should be. And that means there has to be a willingness to stretch one's abilities. There has to be a willingness to reinvest in one growth, whether that means going back to school or taking what more a coaching situation or being in a mentorship situation. There has to be a willingness to pay a certain level of a price to be able to stretch one's ability. So where a leader has to sit with staff members or a staff member who is unwilling to grow, then again, remember what I said. In terms of one of the leadership shifts in organizations at the moment in coping with what COVID-19 has put us into is understanding the power of dialogue or conversations within organization. So the first element is to be able to assess the staff members' capabilities through a process, whether it's a structured staff appraisal process or it's a random conversation about outputs and expectations around productivity. Somewhere along the line, there has to be a genuine conversation. And the way we set this conversation as leaders, it has to be in an environment that is firstly safe to say what needs to be said on both sides. A leader must be brave to say what needs to be said, while the other staff member on the other side must also be brave to say what he or she needs to say without fear of repercussion or intimidation. And then thirdly, there has to be an element of saying, we can do this thing better. We can refocus our attention. So for example, look at areas of strength and look at the areas where the employee feels more productive as long as that area of work is aligned to organizational mission and vision. Then perhaps change the role of that particular member of staff to focus in the areas of their strength that are aligned to the organizational vision and mission, and remove areas that are less productive as far as they are concerned, that become an energy drainer that does ultimately affect their output and productivity. So you can only receive this kind of things when you're doing a conversation in a safe environment in the workplace, where employees do not fear any repercussions or do not feel intimidated and are able to speak freely, knowing that their input is respected and that they are heard, they are honored, and they are appreciated.
Thank you very much. Vincent Ochambo said, timely nuggets their own organizational shifts shared by the doctor, make people appreciated. Wajiko Gicho say watching from Nairobi. Albert Nyakundi saying following. And Jason Musioko said very useful insight, grow on organizational response during these tough COVID times. Dr. Paul, what would be your final thoughts, even as we close this broadcast today?
Well, I would say that change is a leader's friend. And now, by extension, because of COVID-19, is also a friend of organizations. There is no organization that would intend to grow as long as it remains static and it remains unresponsive. But while we embrace change, we must also remember that human beings are assets and they are not a problem to be solved. Therefore, any leader, organizational leader, need to explore opportunities that can enhance their human potential of the members of staff that they lead on an ongoing basis. And secondly, they as leaders must practice what I call continuous ongoing self-awareness. Understand yourself first as a leader, introspect, and then act, because your actions have a direct implication on the productivity of your team and overall productivity of the organization. And we want to ensure that COVID-19 does not leave us more worse than it found. It must leave us more better and make us even become better leaders, better employees with thriving organizations that are able to meet the obligations of their vision and the demands of their growth.
Wonderful thoughts. Thank you very much. We really appreciate, and I can see that from the comments, people are really appreciating the wonderful nuggets that you've given today in relation to organizational leadership shifts. Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave you with a quote from John Maxwell, who said, if anyone thinks he's a leader and there is nobody following you, then you are simply taking a walk. If you are in any leadership position, make sure you are together with the people that you're leading, that they are not just following you, but you are engaging and creating value, not only for the organization, but for yourself. Next week, we continue with this conversation right here with Dr. Paul. And I want to believe that you are benefiting big time. May God bless you, and let's see you next time.